Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I have two health news articles for you, both from Daily Mail, both about reproductive topics. So I am just going to jump right in. So the first article we have here, quote, scandal of unlicensed midwives linked to deaths of hundreds of newborns as mother tells dailymail.com that fake practitioner ignored signs baby's heart was failing. So this is obviously a very tragic story about a mother who was under the care of a midwife, and the baby was, supposed to be delivered. There was a lot of, complications, issues kind of along the way that the article talks about. And, these things sound like they were kind of ignored. The midwife thought she could handle the birth instead of referring the patient to the hospital. When she finally did go to the hospital, kind of it sounds like against what the midwife's wishes, they did an emergency C-section, but the baby had aspirated meconium and was, alive, but they tried to resuscitate it. They were unable to resuscitate the baby and it passed away. So it's a very tragic story. But I wanted to point out some things about this article because tragic stories always can be used to make us, think that we need something like legislation. And that's exactly what it sounds like is happening here in this article. So first thing I want to point out is that this article is actually from 2014. So this is not a recent story. And you would think if there was really hundreds, of newborns dying in a short period of time, then they would have been able to find a story like this that was much newer than 2014. The other thing I wanted to point out, like I have mentioned, is that a lot of times when they tell you a very fear-provoking, emotion-provoking story, it's because they want you to think that something needs to be done. And so the point that this article makes is that here in America, every single state does not have a lot of laws or specifically licensing laws at all around midwifery. And so there are lots of states right now that don't require licensing, but several of them are kind of working on this right now. So they're trying to get that pushed through. So this article kind of seems like a justification of why those states should adopt these laws about midwifery. So the states that don't have any legislation going through and do have no licensing laws would be Mississippi, Nebraska, and Kansas. So let's talk for a second about what the article points out about midwives. So this person, the reason I think that they call them a fake practitioner is that it sounds like they were a certified practicing midwife, which has the lowest amount of requirements, the lowest amount of basically schooling to receive that credential. I'm not even exactly sure what they have to do, if it's like an online course, something like that, I'm not sure. But what I do know is that the other types of midwives, so we have certified nurse midwife. That's a nurse who actually goes back to a graduate program to become a midwife. We have certified midwife, which is somebody who's not a nurse, but they still go to this graduate program to become a midwife. And then there's this certified practicing midwife or practical midwife that would have basically less schooling or less requirements than the other two. So what had happened in this scenario, the person was practicing in California where there was licensing laws, and for whatever reason, I'm not sure, they were not licensed, so they were put on a probation. When they were on probation, they had gone to Nevada and practiced there because Nevada at that point didn't have any laws around midwives being licensed. So there wasn't any recourse for the family, which is really sad. And they didn't really understand, it sounds like that this person was this certified practical midwife. They thought that maybe she was a nurse midwife from what the article said. So it's pretty, it's a sad situation, and you always want to know what are the requirements, what is this person's background, what are their credentials before you trust them with your health, of course. So but does this mean that what we need is more laws? That is what the article is pointing to, but let me point out another bit of statistics that shared. So the Florida Council, which I believe Florida Council for Midwives, I believe that they said that they oversee thousands of midwives. I think it was like 4,500 or something from the article. And they said they're backlogged. They have gone through 36 of 170 complaints, and 10 of those over the last 10 years were deaths. So averaging one death per year that is part of these complaints in Florida would make me think that this is not a common outcome. This is not like what the article is saying, where it's hundreds of deaths happening constantly of newborns. Even a baby born in the hospital could, not survive, or mothers too. There's a lot of complications with C-sections and things. But the article did point out that there's, according to their statistics that they had, it's more higher mortality with these home births. Don't know that they necessarily said when it's I think the birthing center in the hospital is what they pointed to being like a safer option. But it's always your choice. Here in Louisiana, it's kind of funny. Like, I can't have a home birth as a VBAC because of the laws around it. And so I would personally wish that there was a little bit less laws, because if I was going to have another baby, I don't think I would want to have it in the hospital again after being kind of pushed into a C-section. So you always want to ask yourself, like, how many laws need to be around things versus common sense and educating ourselves on who we're trusting. And then also always going with our gut feeling of, like, if something feels like it's going wrong, is it time to go to the hospital? And always having somebody with you that makes you feel safe, that's like a third party. In this case, it sounds like it was her mother, and being able to like speak up for yourself and everything. So it's a sad story. But I do want to point out that it is a 10-year-old story, and that they are kind of sharing this with you to also let you know that they're working on legislation in a lot of states that I'm sure that, lawmakers are hoping passes, or whoever's kind of put this legislation out there is wanting it to pass. So there's always kind of an agenda behind these articles. Okay, so second article here, we have women in red states begin moving their embryos out of state amid fears about Alabama's court ruling embryos are children. Sorry, that was a little bit jumbled. So basically, here's what happened. In Alabama, there was a case, I guess, where some embryos at a fertility clinic were dropped by somebody who was working there. And families had pushed for a wrongful death suit. And I thought that was pretty interesting, that I think that it was almost like denied, and then they went backwards and passed it. And that was kind of the sense that I got from the article. And so what they did was that they deemed those embryos are children, and that they would apply to like a wrongful death case where the parents would be able to basically like sue the clinic for the loss of those lives. And I thought this was pretty interesting for a few reasons. Number one, a lot of people kind of came out against this. I actually saw Carrie Lake make some statements on her Twitter, maybe not directly to Alabama or to this situation, but about fertility, health, and how we should be like putting more resources towards reproductive fertility treatments and things instead of less, which if you look at the comments on that tweet post, so many people were like, no, this is not pro-life. Like, we shouldn't be playing God by like making embryos and freezing them, which y'all know I did a video on this recently too. And I believe that's true, but here's where the splitting the hairs thing comes in. So if you're going to say that the embryos are people and that this is a wrongful death case, and then the parents want to sue, what responsibility do the parents have if they're going to say that this is a baby, this embryo is a baby, not to put their baby in that position where it's a vulnerable, frozen in time embryo where anything like could happen to it. It could be dropped. Somebody could take it later to use it for something else, they could die and that embryo is just suspended in time. So if you are, as a parent, viewing that as a child, as an actual human being and not just for your own use for when you want to use it, then I would say you actually have a responsibility not to create it in the first place in such a vulnerable position, because this isn't an accident. It's not like you accidentally, got pregnant. And in that case, I'm not supporting like the right for abortion or anything like that, but I'm saying this is like a purposeful, intentful action. And so if you think it is a baby, should you really have ever taken this action? And my answer personally is no, you shouldn't have. So they had quoted a woman, Amanda Zarowski, I believe that's how you say her name. She is a 36-year-old from Texas who says that she's moving her embryos. This is causing her a lot of fear and anxiety. And she's worried that Texas will follow suit. So she wants to move her embryos, but she won't tell us where. But the reason that she wants to do this is because apparently, she's worried that this could affect her ability to use those embryos because supposedly a lot of these clinics in Alabama now don't want to have anything to do with reproductive, health or whatever they want to call it, this IVF type of situation because of the ability for people to sue them for these wrongful deaths. So I thought it was interesting because this same woman says that she wasn't actually, somebody in a lawsuit against Texas, abortion ban, and because she was 18 weeks pregnant and went into septic shock. She said she was risk of dying. And so I did read her letter. I guess I found it online where she had talked to the legislator saying basically what had happened is that baby was an IVF creation and she was pregnant 18 weeks. Something was wrong. The baby, she had, I think, early rupture of membranes. So it was pretty much like imminent. She had started dilating early. It was pretty much imminent that the baby was going to pass and that it was, going to pass on like it was still alive, but that it wasn't going to be able to make it and that she was kind of at a risk for infection. So she'd apparently wanted an abortion or something, but they had said no because it wasn't medically necessary, that she would just have to go through having the full miscarriage. So what she said happened was she went home and waited for, herself to either get an infection, go into sepsis, or, just passing the baby, having the miscarriage. So apparently she says that she did become septic, go to the hospital, pass the baby, spent a few days in the ICU, was having, sepsis, sounds like even septic shock, and then after some time recovered. And so she had gone on, I guess, in this lawsuit to tell her story. So I thought it was interesting because basically now she's saying she still wants to use those embryos. And I guess this is where, this is going to sound really bad, but this is where it becomes kind of hard. When you play, God so much, you have to play God every single direction. So you want the baby, so you're willing to do anything, including harvest other children, freeze them in time, put them in your body unnaturally, and leave those other ones on hold, not knowing whether or not their soul is basically suspended, cryogenically frozen, or whatever it is, for years, decades, maybe could be for a long time, or, if they're all going to perish. And so you want to get pregnant, and then when that doesn't work out, because your body is actively telling you by not getting you pregnant that, it doesn't want to be pregnant, it doesn't feel ready, it can't handle it, and that when that happens, it fails, then you want to have an abortion and end that baby's time early instead of letting it pass naturally. And then you want to keep those embryos to try to do it again. And this is just an ongoing cycle. So that's where I think that always, 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 we're going to come back to the same things. When it comes to health, the focus needs to be, why are we not getting pregnant? Why do we have fertility issues? We need to actually spend our time worrying about that. And I promise you, it's not just like evolution. It's not like it's always been this way type of thing that they tell us. It has to do with the food we're eating, the drugs we're taking, the shots we're getting, the time probably we're spending with these EMFs. I try to at least use the corded headphones. But all of those things were disrupting our body's ability to, get pregnant and carry a baby. And then because of that, we want to play God basically and use medicine to intervene on it, when what we really need to do is take a step back, care for our bodies, care for ourselves, figure out what's going on, help ourselves with our fertility to make ourselves more fertile, and do the same for our children's. And then there comes an acceptance too sometimes, where you have to say, would I love another baby at 37? Sure, I would. But the thing is that, you know, if my body is not willing to do that, then maybe that's not what God has in mind for me. And instead of trying to play God and create that situation when my body's physically telling me it can't do it, maybe I need to adopt. Maybe I need to look at foster children that need a home. Maybe I just need to be a mentor in my community. What other tracks can I take? Because life is not perfect. You don't get everything you want. Some people really want something and they never get it. And at a certain point, we kind of have to accept that and do as best as we can for our health, but also not think like, hey, I would go to any lengths for something, like freezing literal little humans just at my disposal to use if and when I want to, and then sue somebody when they drop them by accident, even though I was just going to leave them there frozen. You got what I'm saying? So might sound a little bit harsh, but it is what it is. So I hope you guys like this video. Again, I always like to talk about why they are telling us about different things, the issues on both sides and the take home. And the take home is always going to be like, you have to be there to be the champion of your own health. You have to decide what's right for you. You have to do what makes you feel comfortable. You have to take as best of care of your body as possible. No one else is going to do that for you, whether they're a doctor or midwife or an IVF clinic. It all comes back to you. And I believe that if you follow God's design and protect your health in the way that God has wanted us to, with nutrition, exercise, sleep, rest, all of those things, that you're going to have the best outcome and the best life possible. So I hope y'all like this video. I will be back with more health news debunked soon.